Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series with the Los Angeles Angels. And we are just at the beginning of free agency for the 2026 season. We've gone through the arbitration period and the start of the offseason. Ended up making 3 trades focused on our pitching and defense. Brought on Anthony Volpe from the Yankees to play shortstop for us, hopefully, if he's healthy after missing most of this past season. And center fielder Grant McCray from the Giants organization to upgrade our center field and shortstop positions defensively. Question how much offense we're going to get from either of those players, but we'll deal with that on the other end. But in addition to upgrading our shortstop and center field positions, that lets us move Kyle Tucker from center field to right field and Zach Neto from shortstop to second base, which also upgrades those positions defensively as well. So think that those trades made sense, or else I obviously wouldn't have made them. We also made a trade to bring on the veteran Corbin Burns, who is very overpaid for what he is at this point, making close to $31 million a year. The Diamondbacks are rebuilding, so they were willing to trade him to us, and they also kept a good chunk of his contract going forward. So he's actually around a $11 million pitcher for us, which could actually be decent value for us. I don't think he's going to be a 4 or 5 WAR kind of guy, but I think he could certainly put up a 2.5 or 3 WAR for us, and for $11 million out of our pockets, that's a pretty good investment if it works out. It gives us another respectable major league starter in the rotation. Still have some work to do on the bullpen, and would love to bring in another starter, although realistically, I don't think that's possible. But got thrown for a little bit of a loop in the free agent class here, because there is a potentially franchise-altering player available. Juan Moreno, a 28-year-old coming from Cuba. We have low scouting accuracy on him at this point, but he's looking for a ton of money. So we tend to think his profile is going to look pretty similar to this as we scout him up. We're not going to know much for 3 weeks, however, and given that you don't normally see a player like this on the open market, he is a guy that we may have to act on sooner rather than later, at least in terms of getting an offer out there. Now, he certainly would not be a shortstop for us with these ratings. I think he's an ideal third baseman, and we could certainly get him pretty well trained up at third base between the shorter session of the development lab that's coming up and playing there every day in spring training. Could also be a fantastic first baseman defensively with his 6'2" height and those ratings, but we likely have Vlad Guerrero Jr. locked into that spot for the foreseeable future. Did talk last episode at the end of it when we saw Moreno on the market about what we'd have to do, and would keep Volpe at short, Neto at second. Addison Barger becomes the guy who may be without a spot, and he had a really solid year for us last year at third base. Was named an all-star for the first time after we picked him up in a trade with Toronto a little over a year ago. Ended up with a 108 WRC plus on the year, a 2.6 WAR. But the positive thing about Barger is that he can play a competent left or right field. He's not going to be great there, but defensively in left or right field, he is better at this point than Nolan Shanuel, who occupies that spot for us right now against right-handed pitching. So there's options with Barger. The other thing that several viewers have recommended that I can't really argue against is if we bring Moreno on board, you try to trade Barger to bring on some of the pitching help that we need, and that's certainly something that we would think about as well. Got a real good response from the worldwide scouting department to the Moreno question, and appreciate all of the feedback. Calvin Ha was the most cautious on Moreno. Calvin suggested not going down that path. But otherwise, people were pretty supportive. Tyler McGlanty and Bladestaff both had some concerns, which I get. In a perfect world, we'd be spending our money on pitching. In a perfect world, we'd know more about a guy like Moreno before we necessarily committed to him. But I think they both came down on the positive side. The next notch up were Right Slow and Alkshi, also generally supportive of a deal with some concerns, but ultimately I think they think it's the right move. And then Avery Shayam, fake name, Ian in NS1 CLRK, all very supportive of trying to bring Moreno on board. Those of you who have followed me over the years know that I tend to try to build teams with pitching and defense. And although we've made a little progress on those two fronts this offseason, if we were to bring Moreno on board and potentially be looking at a lineup with Guerrero and Kyle Tucker in the middle of the order along with Moreno, that's going to likely be about $100 million a year for the next several seasons spent on those three players. And it will be a different way of potentially building this roster for me, focused on very high-priced, experienced hitters. But I do think it's the right thing to consider. Taking a look at the OSA ratings, and there's average scouting accuracy there. Directionally, they certainly support that he is a pretty good player. Doesn't look as good according to the OSA as our head scout thinks he is, but our head scout is more adept than the OSA, even though we've got the low scouting accuracy. So I'm going to at least investigate what it would take to get some kind of offer out there to him. What I don't want to have is someone blow him away with the offer over the next 3 weeks before we even get an updated scouting report, and us lose the chance at a potentially franchise-altering player in Moreno. I don't think the probability of that is too high, as most teams probably have pretty low scouting accuracy on him. And you would think with a guy like this that we've got 2.5 weeks till the winter meetings start before things really heat up. But given that it's November 30th, there's also no guarantee that we're even going to have that scouting report back by the time the winter meetings start, and he might come off the market. So he told us last time he's looking for 8 years, $36.4 million. Actually, that might be a tiny bit less than I think he was asking for. I can't remember. We haven't moved forward because it's obviously free agency filing day, so I wouldn't think that the amount he was looking for would switch, but I'm getting old and my memory, especially my short-term memory, maybe starting to fail. We're going to try to put a decent offer out there to him, probably a few less years, a little less money, and maybe some team options in there. We certainly don't want to insult him, but we certainly don't want to put our complete best foot forward right now, given that we don't know a ton about him, at least from our scout. But presumably we know that he's been a extremely productive player in Cuba. And Moreno, as we noted, looking for $291 million over 8 years, $36.4 million average with a player option in the final season. We're offering him 1 year less, 7 years with team options for the final 2 seasons, average of about $33 million a year, but certainly heavily weighted towards the end in those team option seasons in his mid-30s at $40 million a pop. Kept in the bonus that he was looking for the MVP, lowered the All-Star bonus a little bit. Definitely not an insulting offer here. I don't know if it's something he's going to take back to his family, but we are going to be aggressive here despite operating in a little bit of the fog of war with our scout. He's willing to do a 7-year now, so we've gotten him down a year on the deal, but he wants a player option for the final year, and he basically wants essentially the same type of average value. think we'll try to meet him in the middle a little bit. We've only increased the average annual value a little bit to $33.1 million. We kept in the higher all-star bonus he was looking for. We kept in the 7th-year player option. So the structure of the contract is what he came back with. It's just that the money that we're offering him is $3.5 million a year less than he's asking for. I think we're probably still a little light to get him to consider this, but we'll ask him for a response. He's still pretty willing to play ball with us as far as the negotiation right now. He says he's willing to think about it. Could be a franchise-altering move, certainly, given how little we know about him. But we're going to get this offer. 7 years, $232 million out to Juan the Wench Moreno. The Wrench Moreno, not the Wench Moreno. And who knows, maybe we'll have a first mover advantage. Maybe everyone else is going to do more detailed scouting on him and think that no one's going to make a real strong offer until the winter meetings. And it would have meant that he would have been a $36, $37, $38 million a year player if a bidding war started. And perhaps by being very aggressive and saying we only live once, we might get a chance at the 28-year-old switch hitter before the competition really heats up. I don't think that'll ultimately happen, but you don't know until you try. And outside of Moreno, we've made offers to a number of minor league contracts to some somewhat experienced major leaguers to just kind of help the depth in the upper levels of our organization, give us a few more bodies to consider in spring training next year, but certainly no one significant. Moreno is definitely becoming our focus for at least the early stages of this free agency period. And we've simmed forward a week, still no updated scouting report on Mr. Moreno, and still no feedback at all from Mr. Moreno on that 7-year, $232 million offer that we have made to him. Hey, and it's been a while since we've had this one, since if you remember our Oakland A's series from last year, we didn't play with the storylines on, but Robert Bob Stevenson has asked us to help the community and raise awareness for the plight of the less fortunate. And being as giving as I am with Artie Moreno's money, we are going to go ahead and start a charity out of the kindness of our heart, and not because we expect that we will ultimately get a nice bump to fan interest from it by doing this very charitable act. So we are going to go ahead and start a charity, spend some money supporting Robert Stevenson and helping those in our community who are less fortunate. And our scout is really trying to lose his job. You may remember that we were also scouting Edgar Murillo, coming out of the international free agents, another pitcher from Cuba. We had Murillo lower on our list than Moreno. And Moreno, of course, is the guy that we've offered over $30 million a year to. So the scout decides to give us the scouting report on the guy that we haven't offered anything to before he gives us the scouting report on Moreno, just to make me angry. And we've waited a couple more days, and we did get the scouting report on Moreno. Still view him as a 5-star guy, and scouting accuracy is high. Still looks like above average contact, average gap power, ridiculous home run power, and an excellent eye with a glove that could certainly play at third base, and that captain personality with high leadership and work ethic. So still have not gotten any feedback at all from Mr. Moreno on the offer that we made to him, but we're going to keep it outstanding and hope that we can ultimately bring him on board. And with the winter meeting starting today, finally got some feedback from Moreno, says that we're the best offer that he's gotten. Supposedly Milwaukee and Arizona also pursuing him. But he's going to keep thinking about things, so it's not inconceivable that he's going to come back looking for more money in the next few days. And not surprisingly, Moreno coming back saying he's got a better offer than ours. The Braves have put together a better package. Says he's looking for 7 years at over $38 million a season now, so almost $270 million over those 7 years. Still looking for the big MVP and All-Star bonuses as well as a player option in the final season. So time for us to make some tough decisions here. And I think we're coming back with a strong offer, an average of $37 million a year for those 7 years with a player option at the end. This 1 year, upcoming year at $30 million, going to be a little less. Then he's making $38, $39 million a year after that. Want to still try to maintain the scouting and player development budgets that we've got in place right now, so we want it to be a little lower this year. He says he's willing to think about it. 7 years, $259 million. Go big or go home. That's what I'm telling myself right now. And he does say that he likes this offer, but we've heard that from him before. And Moreno back looking for even more money, and unfortunately he's really tugging at our heartstrings now, saying that he's perhaps going to go to the Mariners. Actually, he's tugging at our purse strings, trying to get them to open up. Whoa. Says he's looking for 7 years at $43.3 million a year at this point. So we'd be paying more for him in average annual value and total contract value than we offered to Vlad Guerrero Jr. last offseason if we're to meet this demand. And with the demand from the wrench for over $43 million a year for 7 years, I've been going back and forth, and I was ready to just completely walk away. But we're going to put one more offer out to him. It's not going to be at the number that he's looking for. But it's going to be the last and final offer that we make to the wrench. And we're willing to go to 7 years, $280 million. So an average of $40 million a season for the wrench. Well off of what he's looking for. Not even sure if he's going to take this one back to his family. He says he will. So we're going to continue to do this dance for at least another few days. But as I said, this is it for Moreno from us. If he comes back, says he wants more money, we're going to tap out. And we've made it to the Rule 5 draft with the improvements that we've made to the roster over these last couple of years. And honestly, it looks pretty uninspiring to me. Not sure that we're really going to go after anybody. I guess the hope is now that we don't lose too many people, although we've got spots on our 40-man right now. I think we've got 36 or 37 on the 40-man, and we've kind of protected everyone who's eligible that we really care about. So likely to be a quiet Rule 5 for our Angels here in 2026. And it ended up being a very uneventful Rule 5 for us. We didn't pick anybody. We didn't lose anybody. So we moved back on to waiting on Mr. Moreno. And finally, some feedback from Moreno. He claims that he likes our offer. Looks like The Diamondbacks are still supposedly involved as well. So we continue to wait. If he comes back to us again and says he wants more money, as I said, we will be moving on at that point, even if he's trying to bluff us. And still waiting for a decision from Mr. Moreno, but we've got our initial feedback on how the programs in the development lab are going. We've got a few frustrated players, Zach Neto, Matthew Lugo, and Addison Barger. And then Logan O'Hoppe struggling with his gap power program. Other than that, 5 players on track. Andres Rodriguez, Sean Gamble, Grant McRae, Ben Joyce, and Nolan Shanuel. And Christian Scott is excelling with his secondary pitch improvement program, so that's good to see. Logan O'Hoppe definitely really struggling, but not too far below the line to just be frustrated. I don't think we're going to pull anyone out of the programs at this point. Overall, we're having a reasonably high success rate, but definitely disappointing that a medium difficulty program for O'Hoppe is causing him a lot of consternation right now. And Juan Moreno back saying that he wants more money, says the Cubs have offered him $290 million, says he's looking for 7 years at almost $47 million, $328 million to sign with us. And at this point, we wish Mr. Moreno the best of luck, but it is time for us to pivot. And now, since we are going to move on from Mr. Moreno, we've boosted our scouting and player development budgets way back up, so the amount of money we've got left to spend is significantly less at this point, but still certainly enough that we should be able to make some moves as we get closer to the trade deadline next year. Not in love with anyone on the free agent market at this point, so we're actually going to make a trade. We perused the trade block, and Luke Weaver, one of the better relievers that's out there, the right-hander, set to make $2.64 million for the Astros this year. Think he can add a little bit to our bullpen, and not going to take a lot to bring him on board. Need to trade the 23-year-old third baseman Adrian Placencia. Respectable defensively, respectable-ish offensively. Put up a 135 WRC plus for us last year in Double-A, but hasn't even made it to Triple-A in our organization yet. So not a big part of our future, particularly with the trades we made to bolster our infield, most notably the acquisition of Anthony Volpe this year and the development of Addison Barger after we traded for him a year ago. So we're going to bring Weaver on. He could actually be competing, honestly, to be our closer next year. I did think about potentially trying to bring back Joe Jimenez, who ended up in our closer role at the end of last year, looking for almost $20 million a year at this point, and do worry a little bit with those extreme fly ball tendencies that he'll give up a homer in a big spot. If his price comes down a bit, still would consider a reunion, but right now we are more inclined to just continue to monitor the market and see if any bargains eventually develop. And even with the improvements we've made to our starting lineup in the infield, could still use another solid infielder for some depth. So we're going to keep an eye on the likes of Willie Castro and potential reunion with Jazz Chisholm, who we rented last season from the Yankees. Not going to be willing to spend $9 million a year for Castro or $16 million a year for Chisholm, but if they linger on the market, perhaps a offer to one of them could be in our future in the coming weeks. And the fans upset that last year's rental, Jock Peterson, has moved on to the division rival Mariners. 4 years, $68 million. And actually no material impact to fan interest. So glad to see that for a guy who was, when all was said and done, a rental. Moreno still on the market. I guess we'll check in. I'm assuming he's still going to be looking for a crazy amount. Yeah, still looking for 7 years at almost $47 million a season. So doesn't seem like he really wants to sign with us. I'm sure he'll end up signing for less than that with somebody else. And Juan Moreno officially signs with the Philadelphia Phillies. Check out the details of the contract, and a lot less money than we had offered him at some point, at least for this upcoming season. But he does crank it up there in the average, so it did end up being 7 years at about $41.5 million a year average contract for the Phillies to give the switch hitter Juan Moreno. So he was, as we remember, looking for about $6 million a year more when he was asking us to bid against this contract. So doesn't seem like he was all that excited about coming to Los Angeles for whatever reason. And we've made it to the start of the international amateur free agent signing period. So definitely an opportunity here to hopefully find a guy who can be a big asset to this organization. We've been focused on a few different players on the everyday player side as well as the pitcher side. We'll start with the 7 position players that we've got high or very high scouting accuracy on. Third baseman Pedro Perez, very well-balanced profile, good contact hitter, some positive personality traits. Not all that good defensively and high development risk. Center fielder Jordan Garcia, extreme development risk. Looks like he's really good defensively, decent speed, and a potentially outstanding contact bat with really good gap power. Moving on now to some either more highly regarded prospects. Third baseman Tony Lopez, really like the gap power, the home run power, and the eye. I think his contact can also be above average. Somewhat less development risk for the 17-year-old than the other players we looked at. Another guy looking for $3 million, second baseman Armando Hernandez, also known as J-Mike. Another really interesting looking bat, 16-year-old, is durable with gap power, home run power, and an eye that we think could all be well above average. And then there's 3 position players who our scout thinks have 5-star potential, and they're not looking for crazy money, all in the $2.2 to $2.4 million range. Shortstop Alfredo Twinkles Perez, really good personality, solid defensively, and a bat that for a middle infielder with potentially 75 home run power and 75 eye is very interesting. Center fielder Vinny Morales, don't love the amount of times he's going to strike out, but his home run power and his batting eye, both potentially incredible. And last but not least, center fielder Jorge the Murph Mancera, contact, gap power, and eye, all well above average. Outstanding speed, durable, high work ethic, and really good outfield range. So some interesting hitters to think about, but the pitchers are where I may find myself looking. There are 3 5-star pitcher potentials that we know very well, and we also know closer Omar Cristola well. But the 3 5-star pitchers are a reliever, Victor Pa. I think his stuff and his movement could both be absolutely filthy. Extreme ground ball tendencies. Think his slider sinker combo could be excellent, but he is fragile in terms of his injury proneness, and a reliever who's looking for $3.8 million is not optimal. Reuben Burns, 16 years old. He looks like a future star. Think he's going to be able to reach 100 miles an hour or higher on the radar gun. High adaptability and work ethic. We think his stuff could be absolutely filthy with well above average movement and above average control. A potential 5-pitch arsenal with 4 of the pitches being truly world class, plus a good changeup if he does develop it. The right-hander has excellent stamina and is fine at holding on runners with medium development risk. You can tell why he's got the nickname Nasty. And then the young German prospect, Hanno Batz, the Vulture. High adaptability, another right-hander who we think will top 100 miles on the radar gun. And his stuff, his movement and control could all be well above average. Has the most work to do in terms of his control. Potential 4-pitch arsenal if all goes well. The fastball, curve, and changeup could all be outstanding. Potential to mix in a decent major league splitter. Stamina solid, holding runners a little below average. But I think I am inclined to either go with the Vulture or Nasty. Just a matter of deciding which pitcher with a very high ceiling I'm most interested in making our primary focus this year in the IAFA pool. But obviously open to opinions from the worldwide scouting department on which direction we should go. As I noted, there's a lot of interesting batters that we've spent a lot of time scouting out there as well. So when all was said and done, we had a lot of fun flirting with bringing Mr. Moreno on board, but instead we're gonna not make many significant changes this offseason, at least not yet, and we're gonna try to push some of the decisions down to next year. Gonna potentially have a ton of money available next offseason, although notably both Michael King and Adley Rutschman potentially coming off the books, as well as Joe Adell, and guys like Logan O'Hoppe, Mr. Contreras, Mr. Soriano, Reed Detmers, starting to make some pretty significant money as well next season. So we will have some interesting decisions to make next year, but we will have the money to be players in the free agent market if we want to be. So when all was said and done over the course of this episode, the only real addition was Luke Weaver. Gives us another established major league arm in the bullpen, which I think is positive. So with Burns, we've improved our rotation. With Weaver, we have improved our bullpen. And hopefully with Mr. Volpe and Mr. McRae, we have improved our defense. And hopefully with the fact that we've now got Guerrero at first, Barger at third, Neto at second, Volpe at short, and Brooks Lee moving into more of a utility infielder role. If we add another utility infielder over the next couple of months before spring training begins, hopefully we've put ourselves into a position where we feel pretty confident about our infield and the depth, which we certainly couldn't have said in either of our first 2 years running these Angels. So if you have thoughts on what we should do in the IAFA market, would love to hear them. If you've got thoughts on anything else that we might want to think about in the free agent market, always interested in hearing ideas on that front as well. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.